Okay, I think we are live on YouTube. Welcome everybody to BLAW Live. My name is Bishop Larry Ward. BLAW stands for Bishop Lawrence A. Ward. And so we're glad to have you with us each and every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. Wherever you are, whatever your time zone is, we appreciate you tuning in as we just share on some principles and subject matter. And as we always try to, and our attempt is to inspire you, to encourage you, and also try to do things that will be helpful for your life. So welcome. Again, we had such a wonderful discussion on last week. We have returning for BLAW Live, Ron Savage and also Walter Greer. So we want to, again, welcome them. And we're going to go a little deeper than we did last week when we talk about fathers. So we're coming up on Father's Day weekend. And we're going to be talking as men about really what it means for us to be fathers. And it's a very important role here at Abundant Life Church. We really encourage men, and we encourage fathers, and we encourage them to really be involved with their families. So again, welcome, brothers. Good to see you. Good to have you with us.
Good seeing you, Bishop.
Good seeing you. Good to be back. Thank you.
So in a way of looking at our role as fathers, there's a deep dive question about, as we started to talk about men in general. What do you think is missing right now? And when it comes to our communities and Black men and fathers, what might you say is missing that we as fathers can actually fulfill that gap? I'll let either one start.
Okay.
Either one of you can start.
Go ahead, Brother Rod.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think, well, one thing I think is important, that is that we don't buy into the stereotypical hype that there are no Black men engaged and involved in the Black community itself. I think there's a tendency to say that there's no Black men present and there's no Black male engagement. And so it's important for us to not embrace that stereotype. And certainly there are families that are led by single moms, single mothers. I'm not trying to deny that, or I'm not trying to say that that doesn't exist. But on the other hand, we cannot say that here's three fathers right here on the screen that are engaged in their families and their communities. And I could go and list many more. So that's the first thing I think is important that we understand. But what's missing, I think there's always a need for mentorship for young men. And sometimes even when there's fathers or father figures around, the concept of mentorship itself is not present. I'm not saying they're bad people or they're not engaged or they don't have work ethic, but mentorship as a strategic endeavor, sometimes, we not only have to correct and discipline the youth in our community and support our fellow community members, we have to strategically build people up in their gifts and their strengths, help them acknowledge and develop their weaknesses, and really make sure everyone has someone to look up to and look to. So I'd say if there's one thing that I know when I work with youth, that I'd say that's something that comes to mind to me often, and that is a strategic attempt at mentoring young people, men and women, young men and women, receiving that specific type of leadership.
Wow, that's really insightful. So insightful.
Yeah, I would agree. One of the things that I think is missing, also piggyback off Brother Ron, is the respect of Black men. And we see Black men disrespected in the media, of course, and we're going to talk about later regarding police killings and shootings and beatings. Um, that shows society that the Black man is not respected. And even in our Black community, the Black man or the Black male is not respected. Now, going back to what Brother Ron said, there's lack of mentoring, that's lack of positive role models, that's lack of a lot of different things. Um, Brothers need to stick together. And when I grew up, and I'm from down south, we always had this thing where we went to eat dinner once a month or something like that, and just talked as Black men. And we came in 8 guys deep into a restaurant. They looking like, what's going on? It's like, no, this is a Christian men's group. We're not coming in here to start any trouble. And so just that concept and that mindset goes back to what I was talking about, the respect. So when you see 8 Black men walk into a place, that demands the room, especially if we're not there with hats turned back and looking, whatever, and looks just a judgment, but you know how society looks at us. So if you come in and you're not causing any trouble and you're getting together, we lose that respect, and we have lost that respect. But at the same time, we're respected if we show respect to ourselves. So when we walk into a room, our presence demands respect because people are looking. They're always looking. I don't care if a Black man walks into a room of 100 people, they're going to turn around and look at him. Now, some are going to have a negative incognition in their mind, but a lot of people are going to probably have something positive.
Right.
You just never know. So,
Yeah, it does turn heads when you see a lot of, a group of Black men, particularly walking into an establishment. It does draw attention. Um, and it's rare. It's rare sometimes in places where you go that they may have seen Black men in a group going into an establishment to sit down and have a meal, or depending on what geographical location that you're in.
mhm.
So we got a question here just already from the audience, and I just want to encourage the audience to ask questions as well. Put it in the chat box, please. Um, for too long, the stereotype of absent fathers have been played out in the media. And so the question was, well, how do you think we should try to change that narrative? What do you think could be done to change that narrative, and how can we contribute to changing that narrative?
I read a quote recently by Kendi, the
Mhm.
author and lecturer who wrote the book How to Be Anti-Racist, and he said, internalized racism is the real black on black crime, or the greatest black on black crime.
Yep.
And so I think the first thing is that there are studies that show, in terms of time, Black men spend more time with their children than any other racial category.
Mhm.
And so I'm less concerned about the media presentation. I mean, because when we get into institutionalized racism and systemic racism, that when we talk about some of the later questions about police killings and stuff like that, that is designed and historically has been there to undermine the stability and the well-being of the Black community. We know that up until 150 years ago, Black families were separated on the auction block and sold,
Mhm.
and which was the beginning of that stereotype of there not being fathers, but that it started with Black people being sold on families being broken and sold on the auction block. What I'm really concerned about is making sure that everyone does what's in their power, in their control, to be a positive force in our community. That, to
Mhm.
me, because the media is such a powerful idiom, and it sometimes it serves certain agendas that are used for making money, to promote white supremacy and all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have immediate access to control and change that. And we can march and say, well, stop this stereotype all we want. To me, our energy is better spent on, instead of, trying to combat that, how can I take my energy and apply it into my community, into the young people around me, into my family to begin with, as I start with my family, then spread out to my community. I think that's the answer. We
Mm-hmm.
can't control everything, but there are things right within our grasp, right within our control, immediate control, that we can have an effect on, and that's being a positive force in our community. And my take on that is that that's where we should put our energy,
Yeah,
right? That's where we should put our effort.
that's insightful. That's very insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you. How about you, Walter?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the thing is that we shouldn't focus too much on what media puts out there, because, like Brother Ron said, and somebody brought up, years ago to me, like a media person would be at a scene of a crime or something and pass all the educated Black folks and go find the most street individual out of everybody. So regardless of what we do, the media is not going to pay attention to the brothers that's out there taking care of their children, that's in the park playing baseball. They're not going to take pictures of that and post it on the news. They're not going to take pictures of fathers helping their children tutoring and picking them up after school, taking them to school. They're not going to show pictures of Black fathers doing that. They're going to show Black fathers being beat by police officers, on the corners drinking beer and doing all these other different things. That's the image that they're going to show. We can't control that. Like Brother Ron said, they're going to do it, have been doing it, they will continue to do it. The best thing for each individual in our communities to do is to show a positive reinforcement within the children and the youth in their grasp, and then try and be a positive force there. I think that's the way to it. That's the answer.
You
Right.
know, go deeper in that past. There was an effort to end uh, Black media. Years ago, there were numerous
Mm-hmm.
Black newspapers, and there was an effort to put those, undermine and put those uh, papers out of business. You know, and so uh, we now, in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement, there have been numerous newspapers that have actually publicly apologized for the negative coverage of the Black community. I mean, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
undo 120 years of misrepresentation, you know. But I think it's been acknowledged that the coverage has been skewed, it's been biased, it's been racist. Uh, but a lot of it has been prominent because the Black newspaper were forced out of business, and almost
Mm-hmm.
completely out of existence. And so
Yeah.
the long term strategy would be that uh, developing Black media sources,
Yeah. Yeah.
develop Black media sources. And
Mm-hmm.
now in a digital age where you don't need printing presses and large warehouse type structures and workers to do it, developing and supporting Black media sources that actually do right by the Black community. I think that would be the long term strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's that's exactly right. So I got some notes here in the chat, um, that even when it comes to shows like Basic Black, Urban Update, City Line, Say Brother,
Mm-hmm.
even the Bay State Banner, they're on the chopping block. Um, and those are media outlets that really help to lift up and make aware what's happening in the Black community, and also educate the Black community. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, we do need to make sure that we can start producing programming, and that will certainly uplift the Black male and family, and just our role in the community. One of the things I wanted to say about this as well is when it comes to identity, um, how does a man come to an understanding of who he really is and the role that he really plays and the importance of that role? And just as we talked about the media is not out there to help us. But how can we as men um, really help our other brothers and fathers really understand, this is who we are. And identity is a real issue because also I see roles. Men are confused about their roles and finding it hard to fit in and finding it hard to really start saying, well, we used to be the breadwinners, but now, that's not so much the fact right now because we have women have risen to really prominent places, and they don't really need us to make any bread because they can make their own bread. And so, what role do we really have in this kind of this era, and where do you see it going? Where do you see us going?
Let me go first.
Sure, you can take it first.
um, I think the thing is that as men, so there's two things to Black men. There's our Caucasian brothers over here who are groomed to be the main breadwinners in the family, who have the six-figure jobs, the bonus, they go to college, they come out, they make $80,000, $90,000 a year. Not every Caucasian brother, but majority of them. Then you got us, the brothers that go to college. You try to do right, you try to take care of your family, but you don't land the six-figure, bonus every quarter job like our Caucasian brothers. So we face a lot of challenges even on our job.
Mhm.
And to even go in to talk about our role, we have to understand our role is not the financial breadwinner. There are plenty of men who can provide for their family, but emotionally and spiritually, they're dead as they may not even be there. They just stroke a check and buy whatever needs to be done. So as men, we need to understand we're the emotional, the spiritual, and the foundation of the family. How we lead, how we teach our sons and daughters, how we teach them respect, how we teach them how to deal with society and the things that how our society came to be. Things that you can't even put a dollar bill on. That when they grow up, they're gonna be like, man, my dad was like the backbone of our family. He was the patriarch. And so even if the wife goes and makes, in my case, 4 or 5 times more than you, it's okay. It's okay because guess what? That gives you the time to do your career, whatever it is that you're doing, and also to raise your children and even support your wife and be that spiritual head for your home. That's your job. As Christian men, that's our job. Sit back, raise our kids, establish a spiritual home, and that's what you do. That is the goal. That's the identity of Black men. And so you take a worldly view, and you got a spiritual view of that. So the spiritual view is that. And brothers that struggle with it, their spiritual growth, we want to help them and mentor them so they can be that spiritual head for their home, not just be a provider, because it got a lot of brothers in trouble trying to be providers by doing things on the street and doing illegal activities. So, I think that's part of it. There's so many other factors that go into this as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But Ron,
Yeah,
how about you?
yeah, I agree. I think being a father is multifaceted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the role there's it can change depending on the family, the relationship, the setting, the situation. Uh, but what can't change is the being there part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The being there, you used to hear this. People say, well, it's a quality time or quantity of time. And years ago when we were studying fatherhood in our men's group, one of the things we learned, it's quality and quantity. You have to be present. And so
Mm-hmm.
dollars and cents at times play a bigger role in who earns what and for whatever reason, um, as a self-employed person, there was times when trying to earn a certain living was very difficult for me. Uh, but the part about, as Walter was saying, being present for the spiritual needs, for the support, for the guidance, for the love, for the mentorship, for the collaborative role you play with your spouse. Part of, I think, of being a father, a man, our identity is, our relationship to our wives, how that works and how we set the tone for that and how we role model that. All those things come into our identity. And so that's pretty well defined in scripture, and that we're not, Ecclesiastes talks about vanity, what's vanity and what's not vanity. We
Mm-hmm.
can't fall prey to the trappings of materialistic uh, uh, wants and materialistic accomplishments, and see that as the things that God would have us accomplish. But we have to deal with the spiritual, the mental, the well-being that are, of our family. Make sure our family units thrive, go beyond surviving, but thrive.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
avoiding vanity, I think, is very important, which is usually when we're talking about, being the breadwinner. That's what we're talking about. I got 3 new cars and the biggest house and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the thorough understanding of your family, of what God wants and what God sees in us and our purposes? I think that those are greater defining factors, because there's no guarantee that we can physically work all the time. There's
Mhm.
no
Mm-hmm.
guarantee that another pandemic may come when people will be laid off.
Yeah.
I saw my father when
Mm-hmm.
he was trying to start his business struggle, and I noticed how his where his emphasis was. It was never lost on me that no matter how tough things were, he put the family first. When we didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
place to live, he put the family first. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to understand a godly and productive identity as opposed to one that's based on the vanity of the world.
Oh, that's right.
It's
That's
good.
right.
That's good.
That's good. We got about 7 minutes left, and we got two questions that are pretty involved in this discussion. I mean, this is pretty heavy discussion. So we're going to take this one. It's to the entire panel, meaning both of you. And the question is, do you think the traditional roles, and meaning those biblical roles particularly, are being skewed, and it's causing families to break up?
Mm. Go
That's
ahead, Brother Ron.
Well, the desire to have consistency in our family is what led us to church and got us involved, because we said, okay, we need something to serve. My wife and I were brought up differently, had drastically different life experiences up until the time we met. In order to find something that we could both say, this is going to be our guide, we turned to church and the scripture. And so I think there's some real validity in having a consistent and focused picture of what you want your family to be, right? And I think that lack of and I was all, like I mentioned earlier, was role modeled by my parents very strongly, and they were believers, so it was grounded in God. Um, I think it's very important that you know the leadership of the family, the mother, the father, be on the same page about what the family should be and what's going to determine that. And it actually took a lot of pressure off of us, because it wasn't my idea versus her idea. It was God's idea of what the family. So I think not having that foundation can be
Mm-hmm.
treacherous to the family.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so it's kind of like so the Bible, you have to go by the foundation, like Brother Ron said. And then we have to be careful of what's the best word to say? Churches who have a foundation of mindset of thinking that the woman stays at home and takes care of the kids and the husband goes out and kills something and bring it home. And that's their mindset, period. And they base it upon the Bible. And so you have to find your place in a church family, and establish and say, okay, we in this together. It ain't about who makes what. We got to raise these kids. We got to live together and be married and live and grow old together. And that's our goal. That's our focus right now. And so the Bible teaches us how to do that, not worldly stuff. Because to me, that whole mindset that I just talked about, because we went to churches like that down south, and it was just like, whoa, wait a minute, y'all ain't got no food, and the wife is the main breadwinner, but you're gonna work, but you're not. But you can only make $40,000 a year. Your wife can make $80,000 a year. So it was like this thing where they had this mindset, like, oh nope, she stays at home and takes care of the kids. I'm gonna go and make $40,000 a year, and we're gonna struggle, and we're gonna we fight, and we're gonna end up probably getting divorced. That's not biblical. That's not Bible. So it's kind of like it's really depending on, and it's very crucial that people establish a relationship in their marriages, in their other spouses, or if they're dating somebody, that you guys are on the same accord, that you agree. So not one person's making all the decisions, you make them together. So I think that it is causing a lot of divorces because a lot of people focus on the tradition, what we just talked about, instead of just going to the Bible and say, okay, what is this Bible saying? What is it really saying? Not what my mommy and daddy did. What is this Bible saying? And so I think that's the answer to it. So
that's great. And submission, and I tell folks that, submission is not just for when we talk about the scriptures of the man being the head and the wife submit. It says that we should be submitted to Christ as men.
Exactly.
And that everybody needs to be submitted one to another. We don't want to miss that either. That we should be submitted one to another. And that it is so important for men to learn how to work with their spouses and work with their families, work with their friends, and work with people and collaborate, and just be willing. Sometimes you just have to submit your ideas, and sometimes you have to take the lower seat, as they were, even as the leader, and say for the good of what needs to be done. So those are awesome. Especially if you, as we live in this very, very it's a troubling time. COVID has really disrupted a lot of relationships and marriages, particularly in families, has disrupted it so much. And I think, we as African-American male and families alike have really taken a really hard hit in many cases. And so what we can do as men to really strengthen our families and really get back on course is so important. And so here's the last question. I think this one is going to take us to the end, and maybe a smidgen over. It's a question about how do we teach young Black men about controlling their anger, particularly in this is a volatile climate that we're in now. What biblical lessons and principles could you talk about just briefly that would help men, particularly young men, deal with their anger?
Will we take that one first?
Yeah.
But we're not even going. I didn't call on anybody tonight. I said whoever wants to swing the bat.
Yeah.
Well, James talks. The book of James talks about slow to anger, slow to wrath. You know, I think because anger is real, the frustration in the side of the society that we live in is real, and the frustration is warranted when you look at the systemic issues that have been so long pervasive in our society. And so when I talk to my son, and when I talk to other, you know, my godson just graduated and is getting ready to go to the Naval Academy, what I'm talking about is you have to understand that the institutional racism that we live and experience is designed to create anger, which then becomes a distraction from your purpose. So it's almost like a game in a sense. Like our frustrations are real and they're warranted. And sometimes we can't help but get angry, but we can't stay in that space. And we can't allow it to control our thinking or how we feel about ourselves and our destiny. So I remember when my son first became aware of some of the injustices in the world, and I'd say, man, you know, I always looked at you the way I believe God looks at you and your potential. So what do we do? What do you see me do? I get involved, right? I feel like there's kids not getting a fair shake in music. I teach them music lessons. I feel like there's not supervision at the park. I coach basketball. I use my realization of the injustices around me to fuel my purpose to contribute to my community and have a positive impact. I mean, that's in the, you know, in the mission statement of our church, to influence our community, church, and community in the world. And that's something that I really try to live by. So I try to help them channel that, and you know, I acknowledge that it's real. I don't try to say, oh, well, you know, what are you talking about? You didn't have it as tough as I had. Well, you shouldn't have it tough at all. I mean, right? Justice would mean that people wouldn't have it tough at all. We'd all have our fair chance, but that's not the way it is. So I don't try to deny their feelings, but I try to help them understand them and then channel their energy into something productive and positive.
That's good.
That's real good. Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, it also says you're not sinning in your anger. So Bible's not telling you you're not going to get angry. You're going to get angry. If you don't get angry, something's wrong. that's one of the things that I tell the boys. I say, if you see injustices and it doesn't anger you, something's wrong, man. So you got to check yourself on that. I said, the next thing is we got to learn how to process our anger. Not suppress it, process it. Like Brother Ron said, he processes in different ways by volunteering and doing things and doing actions. Another man might sit there and say, I'm going to do mentoring, which is what Brother Ron does as well. The anger comes in teaching young men. When we talk about sin, do not sin in your anger, is what you see on television. Mm-hmm. When you see an individual just pull a gun out and just start shooting and kill an individual, that's sinning in your anger. Because at that moment, they're angry. At that moment. Now, count how long those gunshots take. 30 seconds, maybe. He's taking a life and his life changes. It's done. Didn't process your anger. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, dealing with the wrong people. So you have to sit back and find a place to process your anger when you see it. It angers me today when I see these videos of shootings that happen in Boston and throughout the country in our communities. It just angers me because we've been having mass shootings in our Black community for years. Mm-hmm. Years. This is nothing new for the Black community to see a mass shooting or some type of shooting happening in the community. And that's come from anger. Our communities are angry and we take it out on each other. And like Brother Ron said, they get you angry. Systematic racism gets you angry to where a point where you take it out on your fellow brothers and sisters and innocent grandmothers that sit on their porches and 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds are sitting in there sleeping in their bedrooms. And that's where we have to sit back and teach young men how to handle their anger. So
Yeah. And that is absolutely true. If we don't teach our young people and our children, our sons and our daughters, how to handle anger, while we should be our brother's keeper, we're going to be our brother's killer.
Mhm.
Just like Cain, he should have been the keeper, but he turned out to be the killer. And we need to make sure that we're always mindful of that. And I thank you very much. And it's amazing how time flies, and we're over our time. And certainly we got to do this again, because I know there's a lot more to talk about, even as the stages of manhood. I like to get into a conversation about the stages of manhood. What's going on at each stage and each level. I would think that would be a tremendous conversation. So thank you so much again for being a part of this, Ron and Walter. And those of you who are online with us, thank you so much for tuning in. Share with someone if you like what we're producing on BLAW Live. You can go back to look at the archives of many different guests that we've had that shared some really powerful testimonies and just were inspiring. And also you can subscribe to our channel. So with that, just want to just say so long to our audience. And I'm going to just ask our panelists to stay on for a few moments after we complete. But I'm going to say goodbye to our audience. God bless you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious unto you and give you his peace. Nothing missing, nothing broken. God bless you, and thank you.